Good evening on a Friday afternoon. Check this out. We're back live on Army Reenlistment. We're going to take a lot of your questions tonight. So, I was just doing a Google search on what's called the Enlisted Sanctuary Program. What that means is once a enlisted person meets 18 years of service, they can't be forced out. So just so you, and I may be, our guest tonight may say, you know what, we can. But this month, about a week ago, this site hit 18 years. So no matter what the Army tries to do, we can always retire in 2 years. And I'm not speculating. I'm just saying that we can do that. So with that said, we're back to live tonight. We're back on to tonight's show is about the new retention the program changes. It's a big thing. So I know everyone's dying to hear what it is. So I'm going to bring on now Tim Donahue, the great Tim Donahue, and Shantae Waterbury, because they're the ones that are going to host this show tonight, and they're going to take your tough questions and let our guest answer those tough questions for you. Because, listen, this is your time. Ask the questions. Don't be shy. Be that ranger, the keyboard ranger you've always been. Do it tonight. Ask those tough questions, right? Because our guest tonight is the Army's senior career counselor, the top of the food chain, works in the Pentagon. He's actually friends with the SMA. I'm not sure they're friends, but he's probably his boss. But anyway, Sergeant Major Toby Whitney is going to be on tonight, and this is him right here. So I'm going to back away. I'm going to give the controls to Shantae and Tim. Sergeant Major Whitney, Toby, enjoy the show. And listen, if it's a tough question, we can always answer later on, right?
Got it.
Hey, tell us about yourself and tell us about what these changes are about this time.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. What was that?
Hey, tell us about the changes, or tell us about yourself, first of all. How do you get the position you're in right now? And then we'll go down and ask some questions of you.
Well, as you said, I'm Sergeant Major Toby Whitney, the 16th Senior Army Career Counselor. I came in the Army. I was a medic. I was a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division. As a staff sergeant, I decided to become a career counselor, the best job in the Army, right? And I fell in love with it, moved my way up through. I was an instructor and bounced around for Special Forces Group, Korea. I worked as an operations NCO in the Pentagon, and then as a sergeant major was at the 82nd Airborne Division again, and now back up here at headquarters DA, and obviously frustrating some people, but I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're glad you're here, Sergeant Major. We're glad you're here. And you are frustrating some people, of course, but you're not really frustrating a lot of people. You're helping a lot of people. So first things first, you are here to discuss a lot of upcoming policy changes. I've been talking about a lot of things. Obviously, I've been doing a lot of talking on a lot of lives lately with this beard because I've been on isolation. And I've just come off of isolation. Today, I've been freed. So we want you to talk about those upcoming changes. I've talked about them, but I would like it to come straight out the horse's mouth. So, Sergeant Major, talk about those upcoming policy changes that are going to come into effect come 1 October.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Now, I will tell you that with that beard, I cannot convince the SMA to get beards. So don't ask me that question while we're on this, okay? Because that
won't do it.
But the three main changes that people are worried about with the Army Retention Program for this year are the entry point to the NCO Career Status Program is being changed from 12 years to 10 years. The reenlistment opportunity window is being changed from 15 months to 12 months. And the reenlistment opportunity window extension is the minimum term is being extended from 12 months to 18 months. And we're removing the stabilization portion of the whiskey extension. That's what we call it in our field. I'll call it the row extension. Row extension, removing the stabilization. And there's a lot of concern about this, but let me break this down. The NCO Career Status Program in 2017, prior to 2017, the entry point to go INDEF, right? That's what everybody calls it, is the indefinite reenlistment. The entry point prior to 2017 was at 10 years for as long as I have known. I think as long as I've been in the Army, it was at 10 years. And then in 2017, they were bringing out the blended retirement and continuation pay, and there were other programs, and the Army thought, well, this is in conflict with those programs, so let's align it by making it at 12 years, which is where continuation pay was supposed to be established.
Okay.
The policy was changed. All the policies were rolled out. They discovered that it took about 6 to 9 months to try to work things out, and they discovered that the policies didn't actually conflict with each other. So in 2018 and 2019, there was discussion at the Army senior level to change it back to 10 because it shouldn't have been changed in the first place. It wasn't needed. And so it's been talked about ever since, but it hasn't been done. And so now we did it. And I'll take the blame for it, right? But one of the things I have to explain to people is there is never a good time for a change. It doesn't matter when. If we would have rolled this out in the middle of the fiscal year, that would have been worse. So that's why it's so. Policy changes take a lot of time. It takes a lot of people, input from the SMA, from all these leaders in the building. So we can't just implement a change overnight. And so I've only been in the position for a little over 90 days, and we've been working on this the whole time. So I didn't have any choice. I didn't want to do this in January. I didn't want to do this in June. I wanted to make sure this went into place on October 1st, the new fiscal year. Let's start from the beginning. And that's why we implemented this change now. With the reenlistment opportunity window, I will tell you, we did a lot of looking at this. We knew that 15 months didn't make sense. It was originally designed that you came into the reenlistment window at 15 months, and then at 3 months, at 90 days from your ETS, you were not in the window anymore. You couldn't reenlist any longer. But we discovered with that there were more exceptions to policy that were being approved, so it was basically non-existent. So for the past few years, that 90-day rule hasn't been in place. So now we have a 15-month reenlistment opportunity window. But let's be clear. The 15-month reenlistment opportunity window was only valid for 75% of the population. Because if you think about it, right now, FY20 people that have an ETS in FY23, they're not in their reenlistment opportunity window, right? If your ETS is in October of 2022, you're only going to get 13 months of a reenlistment opportunity window. And if you're in November, you're going to get 14 months, right? So that's really only a window for 75% of the population. We did all kinds of analysis, right? We wanted to make the change because that's just silly that we have every year 9,000 to 10,000 soldiers who don't get the full 15 months. So why have the 15 months? We looked at, well, what if we made it 12 months? What if we made it 18 months? What if we made it 24 months? We did all kinds of analysis. And what we found is over the past 5 years, the vast majority, 73% of all soldiers who reenlisted between 8 and 10 months from their ETS date, regardless of whether they were getting a bonus, not getting a bonus, whether they were male, female, reenlisting for stabilization, reenlisting for training. 8 to 10 months was the most common reenlistment period. So it begs the question of why would you have a 24-month reenlistment window, or you could make it 36 months. But at the same time, if the soldiers want to reenlist at 8 to 10 months, let's just keep it at 12. It's simple for people to understand. As a career counselor in the formation, commander would say, when's the soldier eligible to reenlist? Well, they're eligible to reenlist when they're 15 months from ETS, unless their ETS date is in this month, then they have to wait. This is simple. It's simple for leaders. It's simple for soldiers. When you are 365 days from your ETS, regardless of what your status is, what your rank is, you're in your reenlistment opportunity window. It can't be any more simple than that. And then the last thing I'll talk about is the reenlistment opportunity window extension. We looked at this, and I will be honest with you. I want to be transparent with everybody. This policy causes a lot of turbulence in manning, right? And I know that I've heard a lot of feedback. Oh, you're hurting the soldiers. You know, the 12 months was better for soldiers. But why does it have to be one or the other? Why does it only have to be exclusively beneficial to the soldier to do a 12-month? There's a lot of people who would really like to get rid of this extension altogether. So by just adding 6 months, we still allow soldiers. And you got to remember, we have 11 types of extensions a soldier can execute. This is one.
Yep.
Right.
So if we change all of them, but that's not going to happen. We're changing this one, taking away the stabilization, making it a minimum of 18 months, and the soldiers 100% still have the opportunity to reenlist for the current station stabilization reenlistment option, and they can still receive stabilization. They can reenlist for 2 years. And in some cases, a 2-year reenlistment is actually less time than an extension.
Yep.
Right? So another thought process that I went through in this is looking at, if we have 5 reenlistment options, right? Regular Army, we have current station stabilization, Army training, overseas assignment, CONA station of choice. None of them overlap. So why do we need an extension that also provides stabilization if we already have a reenlistment that provides stabilization? We still want to provide the tool or the opportunity for soldiers to have that option to be able to extend if they need some additional time. But we don't need to have stabilization attached to it, because the short-term extensions really affect manning. It's hard for HRC or for leaders to predict what's going to happen when a soldier executed a 12 months extension. So we had to balance the best for the Army, the best for the soldier, and the compromise we came up with, 18-month minimum. So, that's where we are. Hopefully that explains some of the decision making that went behind these changes, but that's where we are right now. So I'll take the question.
No, definitely get it. The 12 months definitely benefited the soldier more than anything else. It definitely hurt Manning, because the soldiers were allowed to stabilize, because soldiers kept on taking advantage of the 12-month extension. They were able to stabilize over and over, and especially with career soldiers. I know for a fact I had soldiers that were careerists that were able to stabilize when they weren't able to get that they weren't able to do option. That option through stabilization when they weren't able to. So they were able to beat the system. They were able to man the system. We have a couple of questions in there. We got a couple of comments. Lyle Drones as a career counselor, 12 months re-up allowed soldiers wanting to reclass to get time to improve scores or make them eligible without changing them to a mid-career soldier, possibly lose reenlistment options. So they're talking about the initial soldiers they didn't change their category.
Sure.
So that's one, but that's just one category.
Let me talk about that one, if I might. I understand that concern, and I think that one of the important things as a career counselor is we shouldn't only be talking to those soldiers who were in their reenlistment opportunity window. If we identify a soldier during the integration phase, when a soldier comes into the organization, if we counsel those soldiers from the day they arrive at that organization, we can identify that their scores need to be improved, and we should know what the promotion potential in that MOS is. So if we see that soldier when they first arrive, we have, from the time they arrive until they get to that 12-month reenlistment opportunity window, to get them qualified for the MOSs they want.
Yes, you're right. It's the full cycle. As counselors, we're supposed to be doing that from day one. That integration counseling, right. The full counseling system. I totally agree. We have a couple more comments on here. You got a couple of shout outs. Sergeant Major Gaskins says you're his senior career counselor. He's a frequent guest on here. Sergeant Major Gaskins. We got Sergeant Waterbury. Shantae, you got a shout out, the best career counselor on Bragg. I don't know about that one.
That's because I left. Or Sergeant or Master Sergeant Boyce Agee, he'd probably claim he was, but
I hear a lot of different things.
Hey, Tim, if can I have a second?
Yeah, it's your time, Sergeant Major.
Hey, I'm not on social media, right? I have one social media account where I follow a lot of sports, and that's about all I do on it. So I stay away from everything else. But that's my little secret space. But I did have a friend send me some questions that have been asked on social media about the changes. So I'd like to address those if I could.
Oh, all day, Sergeant Major.
So one of the questions that was sent to me was that somebody on there asked, "What is an ETP?" Right?
Okay.
And Army regulations take a long time. You have to go through and make sure that gets screened by everybody. When we change a regulation, it goes to ForceCom, trade out. Everybody gets a say in it, and the process takes a long time. And if we did that, if by changing the regulation, the career status program requires a regulation change.
Yes.
The other two changes are in DA-PAM, which can be changed at the lowest level. But Army regulation has to be staffed and signed by the Secretary of the Army. So that process takes a while. So if we wanted to implement the change to the career status program to 10 years, that could have come at the most inopportune time. What if the regulation goes through the processes and now in July, now we have a regulation that changes it in the middle of a mission cycle, middle of a fiscal year. Now everybody, so half the population that fiscal year would have been able to not go in def, but now the change has changed. So by doing the exception to policy, it allows us 12 months to actually get the regulation republished. And that's why we did an exception to policy for timing.
That was actually one of the questions I had written down. That was one of the questions they asked me the other day when I brought up the changes. That was actually one of the questions about how was the process for the ETP. And that was one of the ones I was going to bring up to you. We had that question brought up, that what was the process for the ETP for that. So I'm glad that your friend brought that up.
And yeah, I was asked if these, been asked by several people if these changes were made because we're downsizing.
Yes,
right?
That was another one.
I will tell you that the changes to the Army retention program have nothing to do with the Army's strength. We could be growing, we could be shrinking. These changes have nothing to do with any kind of growth or shrinking or downsizing. These are changes that need to be made a long time ago, that we're just now getting to the fact that we're making these changes. I apologize to Sergeant Major Thompson if he's out there, or Sergeant Major Morgan if they're watching, but we've been talking about these changes for a while. And so this has nothing to do with what the Army as a whole is doing, because we have no control over that. We have to do what's best for the Army as a retention program to try to make sure we can take care of soldiers and help the career counselors be successful. So this has nothing to do with the Army's changes on that. One last thing, if I can, is I've been asked, why now? Why now do we have to make these changes? And I will tell you that there is no period of time that it's good to make changes. Changes always affect somebody. If you have somebody that's deployed right now that is going to get a bonus, and now we're changing the rules, I understand that. And I'm sorry for that. But what if I would have changed it in June, right? If we change the policy, there's still somebody who's disadvantaged. There is no good time to make a change, but change is inevitable. And all we can do is try to minimize the damage that's done, or the not damage, but how it affects soldiers. We can minimize it as much as we can, but we have to make changes eventually. And the first day of a fiscal year, in my opinion, is the best time, because that way we can start from square one on that fiscal year. So that's why we implemented the changes now instead of waiting until mid-year or next year. We needed to get it done. So
that's the why now. We got a couple of questions going. We got more questions, Sergeant Major.
Okay. Who
or what is involved in making these policy decisions?
Okay, so most of the time, a request for a change, an idea comes up. And what's great is a lot of the ideas come from leaders or from soldiers. They don't come from career counselors. Career counselors have the opportunity to write a white paper, an issue paper, and send it up, request a change. But what happens is that information comes to my office. Together with my team, we discuss it. We look through, hey, is this a good idea or not? Then what I do is I reach out to the senior leaders in the retention world, ForceCom, TRADOC, USERPAC, USERER, USASOC, and we discuss these policies and we get feedback from everybody. If it's something that we believe is going to be a good change for the Army retention program, we put it all in writing. We do a lot of data analysis. How will this affect? We have to look at all the second and third order effects of every change. It's not just about this population. And we get a lot of change requests. I don't want to go off on a tangent. We get a lot of change requests that will affect 20 people. But in an army of 485,000 soldiers, we can't really change a policy that's only going to affect 10 people. We need to make policy changes that are going to affect a wide swath of the soldiers. And so we discuss this. We have Sergeant Major Gaskins who on here. We sit down and we talk to him. Hey, this is the changes that we're proposing. We go through it. He's a great sounding board. He'll ask me questions. He asks those tough questions because he's asking them from the enlisted soldier's perspective and that command sergeant major's perspective. Then we move on to some of the officers. And eventually we have a whole bunch of meetings with general officers. The SMA is involved in these decisions. And then when we finally get it done, the approval goes up to, like for the ETP, the Army G1, Lieutenant General Brito, is the one who signs the ETP authorizing us to make the change. So it takes a lot of work to make a policy change. So it's not something we take lightly. And I will tell you that we have so many people who they believe that we just make policy changes in a vacuum, that we're only looking out for the Army. And I can tell you that's completely not true. We sit down and my team, if somebody brings up an idea and I talk to them about it, they're not afraid as non-commissioned officers who've served as an enlisted soldier their entire career to tell me that is a stupid idea. We should never do that. That's going to affect the soldiers so negatively. And, we have to take a good look at it. But at the end of the day, if it's something that's going to be very bad for the soldiers and there's no benefit for either party, it's just a change, we're not going to do it. So sorry, I went off on that one, but it's a complicated process to get policies changed.
No, we appreciate that. We appreciate the honesty and the candor.
Mm-hmm. So, Major, we got a question, it's a question. So, a lot of our soldiers have been messaging and commenting lately with this new change, the in-depth. As you know, this is probably one of the biggest changes that a lot of people are probably least happy with. Why do you feel, or why would you say soldiers are kind of scared of going in depth?
That's a good question. I think that sorry, there's another conversation going on in the room. But there's the in-depth policy is scary for some people because they feel like they lose control of their career. They no longer have the opportunity to re-enlist for an assignment or for stabilization, and that they feel like that's a big leap, right? But I look at it differently in that, for example, I've had people say, hey, I'm not going to re-enlist because I'm at 11 years in the Army. I'm not going to re-enlist anymore because I don't want to go in depth. I want to be able to control my fate, and I might want to get out at 16 years, right? And right now we are in such uncertain times with COVID-19, the pandemic. There are so many things going on, and everybody's life is affected differently. But I will tell you this scenario. If I have Soldier A with 11 years in the Army who signs up for five more years, they're not going in depth. They re-enlist for 5 years. Their ETS is now going to be at 16 years in the Army. I have a same soldier with 11 years who's going in depth. Their ETS date is set at the 20-year mark. 3 years from now, a life-altering event takes place, and that soldier's like, you know what? I love the military, but I have to get out. I have to go do something else. Army policy allows a soldier who's on an indefinite reenlistment to request voluntary separation. It's a 4187, goes up through the hierarchy, and they can separate from the Army to take care of their family situation. Whereas a soldier who's on a reenlistment contract, they have an ETS date that they have to serve to. There's a huge difference, but the indefinite reenlistment program for many soldiers in uncertain times is probably the better of the two.
It is. Mm-hmm.
So that's just my opinion.
No, it's facts. Like people don't really understand that. When you reenlist for 6 years, you owe 6 years. When you reenlist for that indefinite period of time, like you said, you have that flexibility. If I reenlist at the 10-year mark and I owe, it seems like a long time when I reenlist for 120 months, like an indefinite period. I go to another 120 months. That 10 years, like you said, 4 years, I can do that 4187 and voluntarily separate. I don't have to do that entire time. But people don't understand that. We have a lot of comments. We got it.
Wow.
Shantae's doing some weird stuff. I don't know what Shantae's doing. Shantae, you're in charge.
Sorry.
I don't know what Shantae's doing. I think she's trying to bring somebody on live.
Hey, I did see a question that popped up a minute ago that I want to address, and that's about the COVID vaccinations. Right?
Oh, go ahead, somebody.
There's a lot of uncertainty about that, and we all have seen Fraggle 5. We've all seen Fraggle 5, or you should have seen Fraggle 5. That talks about the mandatory vaccinations. Okay, we're only in phase 1 of this. Read through that and make sure you understand it. There's some very specific things that have to take place. Right now, there's a lot of panic and there's a lot of uncertainty, but there is a lot of guidance that's still yet to come. But just understand that Fraggle, because there shouldn't be as much panic as there is. Just like with the INDEF program changing, there's a lot of things that are getting spun out, but in reality, it's very simple. The process followed, right? And I will tell you that a soldier is not being when you read that FRAGO, a soldier is not being punished because they didn't get the vaccination. There is a requirement that they get this vaccination, and they're given a direct order from a commander. And the failure to obey that direct order is the reason why they might be flagged. They might get a general officer memorandum of right, a GOMAR. So, but understand that, FRAGO, because there's a lot of things that are still yet to be determined, and it's not going to affect the retention policies. These soldiers, because they do not want to get the vaccination, until they are flagged, they are still eligible for retention. Unless they are barred, they are still eligible for retention. We don't have a policy that says, hey, you're not going to get the vaccination, you can't re-enlist. Until they are flagged, they are fully qualified for retention.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right, Sergeant Major. So we have another question that keeps popping up. So we've already dispelled that we won't be bringing back the 90-day window right away. What about Tara? Do you think that's something that the Army will look into starting back up?
No, not right now. I have not heard any discussions in the building about bringing anything like that up. You know, a lot of people believe. I mean, the budgets are tightening. It's all over. Every doesn't matter whether you're in the Army or if you're working at, you know, every Walmart, it doesn't matter. Budgets are tightening. There's not as much money going around as there was, and so everybody's uncertain. But we are right now, we are flatlined. We're not growing. We're not shrinking. Just worry about every day. We're going to continue to come to work and continue serving as soldiers. But there is no, right now, there's no discussions of bringing back any kind of early separations.
Okay. And I think a lot of our viewers don't realize that when Tara was more popular, that was when the Army was in a more critical period of force reduction. And that's not the case right now. So Sergeant Major just answered, we won't be bringing Tara back right now.
And just keep in mind that nobody knows what Congress is going to do. The NDAA hasn't come out. So we don't, right now, it's all speculation. Everything that we're talking about with the size of the military, it's all speculation. There is nothing that we can hang our hat on. So we're just driving forward with the changes like there's nothing going on, and we'll have to react when something comes our way.
All right, so Shantae, you have something that you want to try right now, right?
Well, yes. So we are going to try something very new, Sergeant Major. We have a viewer right now who wanted to ask you a question live. So we are going to bring on Leo Espinoza.
Sergeant Major.
Maybe.
Can you hear me?
There.
Yes. How you doing?
Good. How you doing, Sergeant Major?
Good. What's your
Good.
question?
So my question is about with going in depth, why hasn't the Army or why don't they incentivize it for, you know, we get no options, rarely see bonus, especially as a sergeant first class. And so what is the Army not afraid of losing people who don't want to go in depth, who are intimidated by the thought of it?
Sure. That's a good question. But I want, what's your MOS?
I'm an 88 Mike, Sergeant Major.
Okay. So for 88 Mike, for example, the retention, the reenlistment options and the bonus program are completely separate, but they're intertwined, if that makes sense. So we establish our retention policies, and you know, we have our reenlistment options, including the NCO career status program. But we also have the selective retention bonus program, which is restricted by law. All the rules are set up by law and by the Department of Defense that says you have to be serving in a critical skill, right? And that, you know, and so they look at a critical skill as how short are they? What's the training length? There's a lot of different factors that go into this to determine if a MOS is critical. But the law says you can only pay a soldier a bonus if they're in a critical MOS. And everybody wants to say their MOS is critical, but they're talking about the strengths and the ability to keep those soldiers in the Army. And so, no offense to you, but you know, looking at an 88 Mike versus like a cyber defender, right? That we can't offer them enough money because the civilians are snatching them up quicker than we can keep them in the Army. So we have to throw a little bit more money at that, because that is a critical skill that we cannot retain them. And so when it comes to the INDEF, that is not a critical skill, right? So by law, we can't incentivize the fact that you're going into the indefinite reenlistment, the career status program. If you're in a critical skill, we got it. We will pay the bonus if you're fully qualified for a bonus in a critical skill and you're going into the career status program. But we can't incentivize the program itself because it's prohibited by law. That's why.
Okay, that answers that. And if I can ask one small question as well.
Sure. Yeah.
At the over the 10-year mark, there's no extensions if you're E6 and above at all, like for a service remaining requirement, for an assignment, or for promotion?
Well, there's always an exception to every rule, right? But the policy is that you will sign into the NCO career status program. But like I said, a little bit earlier, I don't know how long you've been on the whole time, but like I said, don't be afraid of the NCO career status program. You sign that contract, putting your ETS date out at 120 months, whatever the case may be. You have flexibility. You're not bound for the rest of your time. If there's a situation that comes up that requires you to change that plan, like I said, there is opportunities. We have the career intermission program, right? We have the ability for you to put a 4187 and to request separation. So don't look at it as that you're signing your life away, right? You still have options. You're still a soldier, and we're still going to take care of you. You know, as long as you don't have a service remaining requirement that prevents you from being separated voluntarily, or some other reason you just got promoted, the Army is going to do their best to give you the opportunity to take care of yourself.
Okay, I appreciate that, Sergeant Major, and thank you all for.
Thank you, Leo. Appreciate you.
No problem.
All right, thank you. Hey, if you have just joining us, we have Sergeant Major Toby Whitney with us. He's talking about the retention policy updates. We really appreciate y'all joining us on a Friday night. Once again, we talked about the retention policy update. Sergeant Major, one time, would you give them a real brief update about everything that we've talked about so far, the three big ones?
Yep. So the three changes that are going into place on October 1st are the entry point into the NCO career status program is changing from 12 years to 10 years, basically known as the indefinite program. We're changing the reenlistment opportunity window from 15 months to 12 months. So when a soldier is 365 days from their ETS, they're entering their reenlistment opportunity window. And the last thing is one of our 11 extensions, the reenlistment opportunity extension, we're changing the minimum term length from 12 months to 18 months. And we're removing the stabilization. Now, we're not taking away stabilization as an option. You can still reenlist for the current station stabilization reenlistment option and get stabilized at your current duty station up to 24 months.
There we go. Thank y'all so much for joining us. Sergeant Major, thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you for everything that you've done up there so far. You've had a busy 90 days.
Yeah.
It's been hot and heavy so far. I know we are taking away from your Friday night, and we really appreciate you and the team. We got your team in the comments helping us out. We don't want to take too much time away from you. I know Oklahoma plays tomorrow, right?
That's right. Play tomorrow? We play West Virginia tomorrow.
It might be tough. They haven't looked too good so far this year. It's tough.
They're 3-0. I mean, you're knocking them down for winning. I mean, come on. A win is a win.
A win is a win. Hey, thank you everybody for joining us. We really appreciate everybody joining us. And every time, and Sergeant Major, anytime you want to come on. But
okay.
You have the shout outs. Anything you want to talk about? The floor is yours.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate one thing to everybody that's out there is that change is inevitable. The Army has to progress. The Army has to change as we move forward if we're going to get better as an organization, right? And so change is never easy. Me, for one, I hate change. I don't want to change anything. But when the change is recognized that it needs to happen, we have to implement it. And like I said, there's no perfect time to make a change. But I will tell you that we are an Army, especially in the retention program, I value the information that's provided to us. So if there's a soldier out there, if there's a career counselor out there, if there's a leader out there who says, you know what, this would be a good idea for the Army to do in the retention program, if you send it to me, I assure you we will look into it, My team can't stand it, but we are going to do everything we can to see if that is something that we need to implement. And if it's something that's a good idea, then we're going to make it happen.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. Shantae, thank you so much for being on here. And that was a great idea with Leo and Matt somewhere, wherever he's at. I think he's hiding in the background playing Marine. Thank you, Matt. And Mary in the background, thank you too. Everybody have a great night. Have a great weekend. And Shantae, you shouting at anybody else tonight?
Oh, real quick, shout out to the TPSGO. I got his shirt on from our show. I received it. I loved it. So thank you for that, Sergeant Hicks. And that's all I got.
Shout out to the lady that gave me the COVID test today to let me get free. I'm happy. All right. Everybody have a great weekend. Y'all have a good one. Good night.